Well, good morning, everyone. Welcome to Clevertar. I'm Tanya Newhouse. I'm hosting this morning, and it's lovely to see you. I can't obviously see your faces, but it is really lovely to have you with us this morning as we talk about our work with particularly with government organisations, but with others as well. I'd like to introduce you to my colleague, Matt Francis.
G'day, everyone.
Matt is our solutions manager, and he's going to be talking a little bit later on in our presentation about, or in our talk with you today, about how we actually go about implementing virtual agents with our customers.
That's right.
And it's actually a really interesting process. We do have the chat available. I think we'll mostly leave questions for the end of the session, but if there are some that come up, that's quite okay.
Feel free to answer those questions anytime you like, and as you think of them, then we can go through them. Yeah, conclusion.
Oh, awesome. All right. Now, are we sharing, James?
That's what.
We're all good. All right. Well, I'm going to get started then. Now, I can't actually see our screen, James.
Open up PowerPoint.
Yeah. The standard webinar technical issues that you have. There you go.
Oh, thank you. All right. So we're particularly focused on government today, as I said. But for those of you who are not in government, there's going to be quite a lot that will be relevant to other types of organisations. So don't feel that this will exclude you. Now, I'm going to start by just looking at what we're going to cover today. Firstly, what we do at Clevertar and a bit about our technology and what are the business needs that we particularly address with our virtual agent technology. And then, as I said, Matt will talk about how we work and introduce you to Zolly, who is our South Australian Health virtual assistant, helping people with COVID-19 inquiries. And then we'll have a couple of other little examples and some discussion at the end. We're expecting this to be around 30 minutes, give or take. It might be a little longer than that, but feel free to stay or go. We'll have it available at the end anyway. All right, so firstly, I'll just tell you a bit about who we are, and if you haven't come across Clevertar before. So Clevertar is a virtual agent company. Now, a virtual agent is a type of chatbot, and chatbot technology is probably something that you're quite familiar with. Essentially, what a chatbot is about automated conversations. So we're really interested in conversations that happen between people and automating those conversations with the use of software, with the use of a bot. And those conversations can happen in various different ways. We can have dialogue trees or natural language understanding. We'll talk a little bit more about those in a moment. But essentially, it's about the conversation. For Clevertar, just again, a bit of background. Our origins are actually from Flinders Uni, where we're actually talking to you from Adelaide this morning. And some research there which was interested in how utilising virtual humans can be useful as part of that automated conversation. So you can see we have an example here of one of our virtual agents or virtual humans. And that research really found that utilising characters or virtual people can benefit in the conversation. But one of the things that we do, which is very common across all of these kinds of automated conversations, is that we use a chat type interface. Chat is obviously available has become very familiar with people around the world, and so utilising it with a virtual agent really makes a lot of sense. So what we've done at Clevertar is create a virtual agent platform. Our vision or our mission really is to make our platform available so that anyone can create their own virtual agents, and that's what we do. So where do we work? Well, we work in three kind of key areas. The first is in online sales assistance. which is really a virtual sales assistant. I'm not going to talk about that too much today. The second is in audience engagement. Now, audience engagement is useful in all kinds of different areas, but we have a health background, and in fact, health has been where we've had some of our earliest success, and I would class that as audience engagement because it's really about having interactions with people about health. You're not necessarily trying to sell them something, but you're definitely wanting to assist them. And the last one is customer service and support, and this is really a very typical contact centre or help desk type application. So some examples of customers in this space, we've worked in telecommunications and other types of retail. With the digital audience engagement, again, I mentioned health before. One of the really interesting areas that we've done quite a lot of work in is actually in mental health. And an example of that is our work with On the Line, which is a counselling service. And then, of course, I'm going to talk to you about some of our work with government. South Australian Government, we're a South Australian company, as I mentioned to you before, has adopted Clevertar, and but now we're also working with the ABS in Canberra. And so there's certainly applications around customer service and support there. Now, what are the interactions where this kind of technology works the best? Well, let me tell you about those. So the key really is that they need to be conversational. So if you're wanting someone to fill in a form, well, I'd probably suggest keep using the form. Forms are great. They are fast, they're efficient. If you don't need to have a conversation about them, just use the form. But where a conversation is useful to help someone understand maybe what the problem is that they have, I'm going to help you clarify or qualify the problem for you, then a conversation is useful. And again, that's where customer support comes in it really comes to the fore. What a conversation also does is allow you as the provider to really get a good voice of the customer as insights as well. So you actually get to hear the sorts of questions that they're asking. And when they can provide that to you in a free text kind of way, when they can say exactly how they would normally say it to someone, to one of your customer support officers, then you really get a great insight into the types of things that your customers are asking. The conversations are very much, if you think about where do I use a virtual agent, think about where do I want to automate conversations. Another key point here is that these are interactions where we want to create trust. Trust is a really important element for any customer service provider relationship. But this is where a trusted relationship with a virtual agent really comes to the fore. So the ability to create reliable, non-judgmental engagement is quite important and indeed is empowering for the customer. Again, it's a great example of where mental health, our mental health origins have actually come to the fore here. I had a fantastic conversation this morning. I was just telling Matt about this earlier with one of our partners, and I didn't actually know this until today, actually used one of our mental health coaches a couple of years ago when she was going through a really dark time, and it made a huge difference to her personally. That's one of the reasons she's become a believer in our technology. And what she said to me was that, I wouldn't have gone to a group session and I wouldn't have wanted to talk to someone about it, but I was really happy to talk to a virtual agent. I wanted to talk to someone who wasn't going to judge me for how I was and what I was doing. And we find that's in serious situations like mental health, but we also find that happens in any kind of situation like, can I please have help with my tenancy issue? We'll talk about that in a little bit later, or I can't figure out how to use my modem. So those sorts of conversations where you do want to create trust with your customer is where a virtual agent can be really effective. Now, it's also where an immediate conversation is required, perhaps by the customer, because if the customer can wait 24 hours or they can wait till someone's available, then maybe you don't need an automated solution. But if that's something that is important, and that kind of convenience, then that's where a virtual agent can work. And of course, digital and scale is something that we're really interested in, because if you only need to have a small number of interactions, then it's probably cheaper to use a real person. If you want thousands or tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of interactions, then that's where digital really comes into its own in terms of efficiency. Okay, so I want to just introduce you to a few members of our team. As I said earlier, one of the unique characteristics of Clevertar is actually our unique characters, and we do employ and use virtual characters in our virtual agent installations. What we find is that when our customers name their agents and, like Claire, for instance, give them a persona and really make them one of their customer service team, that's the right thinking. That's when they start using their virtual agent as an extension of the service that they already have, a very scalable extension. And of course, for consumer engagement, as all the benefits that I mentioned before. We provide our solution on any platform. We do have native mobile apps, although what we're finding is that just simply hosting via a website or direct on a web device is really the best, most accessible solution at the moment. So we can certainly make this available. It's only a very small payload that adds to your website. It's only 2 meg, and that's a solution that we host for you. Very simple, couple of lines of code that goes into your website. Now, of course, it's software. So what does software need? It needs all the standard things that good software has. So at the heart of what we do are the very straightforward software requirements, security, reliability, and performance. That drives everything that we do. And then we start to add the core of our product. And the core is around, firstly, if I just took to the top right, distribution. So Clevertar can be distributed via a range of devices, but as I said, particularly via the web. We then have a content management system that allows anyone to create content for their own virtual agent and manage that content, and also reporting and ongoing maintenance. So we provide a content management system. And then we're really interested, of course, in user experience. And so that's where text, voice, and gestures come into frame. And then on top of that, we have our the features that really make Clevertar unique. And some of those things include real-time synthesis, so a voice that may be synthetic, pre-recorded, which we call natural voice, a three-dimensional character, personality and branding of that character, and then, of course, the artificial intelligence elements, the natural language understanding and dialogue flow that we apply to deliver those conversations. That's what our platform does. How do you decide, yes, this is something I'm interested in? Well, here are some things to think about. If any of these resonate with you, well, maybe this is where you might consider the use of a virtual agent. So the first thing is if there is an internal pull towards this direction, and this is what we find with our customers. So if there's a business imperative to move customers to digital, and we're seeing that across government, and it's difficult to provide local hours, out-of-hours support and stretch staff. I mean, that's the kind of internal pull. Customers themselves are pulling in this direction. Customers are looking for digital solutions, digital engagement. They're assuming that those services are available, those channels. If there's an external push. Now, we've really seen this in the COVID-19 scenario. Our customers have included very urgently COVID-19 content into their virtual agents. And so that's where an external push can lead to the need for virtual agent type solutions. And finally, the customers themselves. So this is more around dissatisfaction and really their service expectations that continue to rise. So these are really business considerations that might start the journey for our customers. The approach that we take is very much around identifying where the business case is for our customers. So the first thing that we do, and this is actually a decision point, is explore the use cases that might exist in our customer's situation. Now, we're not saying that you have a use case where there is value, we're just really exploring it. We want to identify whether there is value, whether we can help create an impact. We actually operate possibly in a different way to others, but in a we really want to be clear that we are actually going to provide a very high level of value for our customers. Otherwise, we actually don't want to do it. So this is about exploring together that we're going to, that we actually are going to make a difference for the business. Part of that is identifying what resources are required, and that there is that those resources, internal resources, are available to develop a program, and that's where we make a decision once again. So, is there a business case? Again, at each of those red points, we can stop the process. So, there's not. This isn't pushed by Clevertar. This is very much a partnership. Once it's decided that there is a business case and we do want to move forward, the customer wants to move forward, then it's a content development process, a deployment process generally that starts with a pilot, a small-scale pilot, and then a measurement, iteration, and build out. So that's how our approach works. What I'm going to do now is hand over to Matt, who's going to talk about this in the context of SA Health.
Thank you. Yep. Thanks, Tanya. So yes, thanks for having me. Looking forward to talking about how we build our virtual agent programs in general, but particularly looking at the focus on our installation, which is Zolly, as we've said, with SA Health, which recently came about due to the unfortunate COVID-19 situation, which is obviously crippling the world. SA Health, as with all health government networks around the place, have had to be a situation whereby the website has been, and their customer service centres have been absolutely bombarded with inquiries and concerned citizens about the crisis. And this was seen as another way to provide valuable information through a channel where they can interact any time of day or night and get really high quality and accurate information by a trustworthy source. So Zolly was built, and our process often takes place over a number of weeks, depending on the size of the project. This one had to be really rapidly fast-tracked, and I'll talk to you about the process and how we did that. So this is how we develop our content development piece. Now, of course, with any chatbot or virtual agent installation, the content really is the most important bit. If you have bad content, then your users aren't going to interact with it, and there isn't actually a reason for them to seek out that information. So the success of an installation really lives and dies by the quality of the content. And we spend a lot of time early on in the project really making sure that when we're designing content that it is meeting a lot of key criteria, and that are just going to, I guess, following on from what Tanya said, it really is about making sure that the value is high for both our customers and also for us as well. So our process is that we design content, we then develop it into content for a minimum viable product, test and iterate, deploy, and then optimize. And it really is following an agile methodology and framework. It's all about coming up with a design and getting it out, to an MVP as quickly as we can, so that we can test, develop it, test it again, continue to look at feedback both from a qualitative point of view, which we seek feedback from our users, but also looking at what the data says. Where are people engaging with the product? Where are they falling away? What are the certain things that they're looking for that they're not currently able to get, and where can we enhance it? So it is all about constant iteration. It very rarely is perfect on the first attempt. It is all about making sure that over time we can continue to add content. And that's the flexibility of the system. It allows us to do that quite quickly and easily, which is a real strength of ours.
In fact, if you have a agile process, we can hook into that.
Yep, absolutely.
With our own sprints as well.
Correct, yeah. So yeah, the very first stage is around designing content, and typically that happens in a collaborative workshop or workshops, depending on the situation. And it's about establishing the VA's purpose and what are the objectives. What are we trying to achieve by our customers' users, our customers' customers, having an interaction with a virtual agent, and what are the outcomes. In the case of SA Health, this was all about looking at what was, we didn't have a lot of time to develop this. It was all about what is the most high value piece of information that SA Health could convey to the population. What are they most inquiring about at the moment, and what can we get out as quickly as possible? And we did that first and foremost by looking at the first cab off the rank. We looked at a whole range of different design ideas, but the first cab off the rank was, what should you do as a citizen around COVID-19? And the great thing was that there was already information in place in a semi-decision tree. We used this flowchart initially as the first port of call to design that information. But a flowchart in general are typically quite cold, as is a web page. It's very one way. A user has to read it, interpret it, hope that it's clear enough, and then take action as a result of that. I guess the advantage of having a chat with a virtual agent is that it is a conversation, and you're having a conversation with a virtual being. So people won't say, oh, the flowchart told me this. They'll say, Zolly told me this. And that's really the power of what we do. So initially we gathered this content, and then we started to map it into a high-level program design. So we take what our customer's content is and start to put it into a format that can be used in a decision tree by a virtual agent. As with all our projects, our customers are absolute experts in knowing the information that their user group needs to receive and the types of information that they come to them looking for. So our customers always are the experts in their domain. Where Clevertar's expertise lie is in taking that information and delivering it via a virtual agent. As part of that initial content design process in that first couple of days, we then had to look at what is the persona that they want to have with this virtual agent, and we looked at a couple of different options. Iteration, you can see on the screen here, we've got the creation of a COVID-19 expert. Zoe went through a few different transformations. She went from blonde hair to dark hair overnight, pretty amazing feat. So there was 3 different iterations there, and finally we ended up with this lovely character, Zoe. She has been customised with different branding options. She's wearing the South Australian government's specific blue, so that she looks like she truly is part of the customer service team.
Right.
Yeah, and the name Zoe, virtual agents, you can call them anything you like. The one that we've chosen here, or that SA Health actually chose, was Zoe, because it has the Greek word meaning for life. So it was a really nice little backstory to the name. And Zoe, quite easy to say, quite easy to remember. So it was a great choice by SA Health. The next stage in the process was to find a voice that was going to match what SA Health wanted to convey to their audience. So in this case, in a time of a public panic, Zoe needed to be authoritative, but also calming. So we had to find a voice artist that was really going to fit the bill for that. So we found one, and we sent SA Health through some design files, and I'll just play a little sample of that now.
If you have a health condition, it is especially important that you stay connected to your doctor. It is safe to attend your GP clinic or an emergency department, which is still open for those seeking medical help when they need it.
So really friendly and very much an approachable voice, but also one that conveys that they certainly know what they're talking about and they're experts that you can rely on.
If you have a health condition...
I'll just play it again. As part of that design stage with Zolly, we also have to look at the way that the virtual agent widget is going to look on the website that it's being hosted on. So there are a number of different design options that our customers can utilize, and everything can be customized to suit that specific website. So I've got a couple of examples on the screen at the moment. The one on the left is totally different industry. It's non-government. It's a private telco called Mate. And they've got an agent called Grace there, and as you can see, she's got a Mate t-shirt on. So we can certainly customize any clothing to suit specific brands and the way that it suits their brand. On the right-hand side, we have another agent called Claire. So this is another South Australian government customer in consumer and business services who have Claire, who delivers information to residents on bonds and tenancy issues. So she's wearing glasses, but also the actual design, the layout, the look and feel of the text, the speech bubble colours, the different options on the bottom, all of those can be customised to best fit your website. So here on the screen, we've got the SA Health installation. So you can see there that the colours really match in with the rest of the website design. And we actually did this in a couple of iterations just through the timing of it, really. SA Health were only 5 days after launch updating their website, so we had to make changes on the fly rapidly to that as well, which we were able to do in a few hours, which was great. And you can see that the little icon on the left-hand side, Ask Zoe, that can be completely customized as well. The character can move, it can be a still image, it can be a whole range of different things. So the next stage was to develop that content and get it ready for testing. So our technical implementation team take that high-level that program map and working with content experts from our customer side, we'll find the information that needs to be delivered by the agent and start to script it out. So in this case, it was a matter of taking the SA Health flowchart and turning it into a conversation. So we then pass it back. It's always a collaborative approach. We'll design something up in typically it's in a Word format, or we might use Microsoft Excel, a number of different ways that we can actually present that information. The one on the screen that I've got at the moment, this is just once again a very short video, but this is of an installation whereby you can see here that we've used a design type program to take someone through a flowchart of a conversation. So where it's appropriate, this is a really nice visual way of mapping out exactly what the agent's going to say, and when the user chooses a certain option, where they're going to go to next. So making sure that that flow happens as it should. We then test and iterate. So this is obviously a really important part of the process, because whenever there's going to be a deployment, we want to make sure that it is thoroughly tested both by us and our customers. So what we'll do first and foremost is that internally at Clevertar, we'll put it through its paces really rigorously to make sure that things are working as it should. But then importantly, we hand over the keys to the customer. And we do that by deploying a test instance, just a web link that they can then work through, make sure that they're happy with the wording, the persona, all of those really important things, because ultimately this is going to be a new member of your customer service team joining. So you need to make sure that it's going to be representing your company in the way that you want it to. So internal testing, we'll then have customer testing, and then once that's all been approved, we'll send it off to get voice files recorded if we're going down the path of having a recorded voice. Sometimes that's not appropriate or desired. We've got synthetic speech options, which are really quick and easy to deploy. We can also have them recorded via voice artists. There's a couple of different ways there. In the case of SA Health, they wanted that really calming approach that has empathy in the voice. So by using a voice artist, we're able to achieve that. So this was something that we were able to turn around in a matter of hours to have all those dialogues recorded, ready to come back into the system again. And testing, dialogue tree testing, and also website integration testing, which is another important piece. we typically deploy to a UA site prior to launch so that we can make sure that the way that it looks and feels is going to function correctly within its hosted website that's going on. So that ensures quality and consistency when it comes to going live. And finally, we come to a deployment stage. So this is where we assist with change management, different activities that might take place within an organisation. Training. So training is a really key part of what we do here at Clevertar because we want our customers to be able to make the changes that they want along the way as well. We certainly don't want them to be reliant on Clevertar where it's not appropriate. We've got a web portal which is fully accessible to somebody who doesn't even have to, you don't have to be a software engineer. If you've got some degree of technical capability, you can certainly get in there and make changes to your virtual agent on the fly. So if you need to change some legislation or if there's a changing in some dialogues that you need to do, it is quite simple and easy to get in and do that. We hold our customers' hands in that whole process through from introductory training through to more advanced level stuff, where it's required. And as Tanya mentioned earlier on, it is only a couple of lines of code to actually deploy this. It's a simple JavaScript snippet that gets uploaded to the Unity website, and then it's turned on and we host the virtual agent. And finally, probably the most important piece, and I mentioned it earlier on in my talk, was about optimization. It certainly isn't the case that we get it live and then walk away. It is all about constant iteration. How does and that's especially important early on in a project because you can design things as well as you think it's going to work, but nothing is the true test until it gets into the real world and you see how users interact with it and how they respond. So it is all about monitoring data and making any recommendations and changes with our customers, of course, that they see fit. So in terms of SA Health, over a 10-week period, we made a number of different changes, and this has been based on trends that we saw within the data. We were able to enhance the analytics and the reporting. This was stuff that, as I said, it was put together in a very short time period. So as you learn how people are interacting, you think, well, actually, it'd be really great to be tracking X. We were able to enhance that over the coming weeks. We made numerous flowchart changes. So that earlier flowchart, which I displayed on the screen that we used, that changed 5 times in the space of 5 weeks, which had to have a complete revamp of the program design every time, in line with what was the latest or is the latest COVID information that's being delivered.
The testing regime in South Australia changed very rapidly.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. The FAQ section, so all of the different information that people were coming to the bot looking for, that started with 10 questions. It's now at 60. So we've added a lot of information as time's gone on. We've got 5 times the amount of content since its inception, which is obviously excellent. And we introduced natural language understanding. Natural language understanding, for those who don't know, is the ability for users to type free text into the system and have the system analyse what it is that they're asking and then direct them towards an appropriate part of our dialogue decision tree. So here's an example of some of the types of things that people have entered into the chat with Zolly along the way. I'm concerned about a cafe near me that I think has too many patrons who don't know what to report to, and I'm 70 years old and have heart disease. Can I go to the pub? Very relevant question for a lot of people out there in terms of going to the pub, that is. But this type of information is extremely valuable for SA Health because it started off by being something that's quite decision tree based, so we can analyse how people are interacting with the content that's available. But this allows you to really understand the voice of the user. And you can obviously make their experience better by directing them towards information straight away that's valuable to them. But it allows you to analyse where there might be gaps in your content and where there is a need to add more stuff. But there's a whole range of different insights you can gain from just understanding what it is how people are actually coming to your website and what are the types of issues that they face and what they need help with. So Zolly's deployment timeline. This is over a 6-day period, which is quite incredible and really is a credit to our content team in terms of their ability to get this out, and SA Health for collaboration as well.
Yeah, I was going to say, and the turnaround.
Yeah, definitely. So day 1, we confirmed objectives and gathered content. Day 2, we designed Zolly and worked with SA Health to finalise and we went through those iterations pretty quickly. and prototyping a start script writing. Day 3 was we submitted our draft scripts for review and confirmed the character and design with the marketing team from SA Health. So SA Health, to carry on what Tony said, they were extremely good at organising all the different departments to what is a big organisation and making sure that everyone was on board with this, which is very, very, very important to a successful implementation of any technology. Day 4, we entered the scripts into our content management system and sent off our voice files to get recorded by voice artists and deployed for testing. Day 5, we did some integration testing with the SA Health team to make sure that Zolly was functioning correctly on their website and was going to operate in a way that was acceptable to users. And day 6, we deployed live to the SA Health website. So really quick turnaround and something we're really proud of.
And did you rest on the 7th day?
That's right, it's a Sunday and we rested, we slept. Following on from that, I mentioned previously that we've made a lot of iterations to the content over time. That's been something that's been extremely important as we've had to make changes quickly to things like response to the SA government's changes to testing protocols, border closures, all those types of things. And we have to do that quite rapidly. We receive the content and the new content flow. We then draft the scripts up, which in some cases has changed 80% of the entire program flow for Zolly and what she actually delivers to customers. We then had the content approved by SA Health. They make any changes they needed to make, anything that needs to go through comms, they'd mark that up. And we then enter into our content management system. We'd send the voice files to our voice actor, but we didn't want to be reliant on information being delivered quickly, because really the users receiving valuable and timely information is the most important thing here. So we would, as soon as it was ready to be in our content management system, we would deploy it and have it delivered by synthetic speech, which is still a really great experience, but the voice artist, as I said, able to have a little bit more empathy in the way it's delivered. Once those voice files come back to us,
so in other words, it's delivered to the customer with the synthetic voice
right.
for a few hours while we were waiting for the turnaround from the voice actor. So it's on and it's up.
Yeah, it's on, it's up, it's delivering all the same information, delivering it in just a slightly different tone. But in this case, that's extremely valuable because the information to the end user is the most important piece. Finally, we'll receive the content back from a voice file perspective and upload it into our system and then turn that on. That's a lot of stuff happening, but it all happens within 24 hours in this case, which again, something we're extremely proud of. Here is Zolly. I'm just going to play a very short clip, which is Zolly in action on the SA Health website. There it is.
Hi, my name is Zolly, and I've been designed by the team at SA Health to support you in finding the information you need about the coronavirus or COVID-19. Recent low case numbers have been encouraging, but it's important for everyone to keep up their physical distancing and hygiene precautions so we don't undo our good work. All of these questions are confidential and no identifying data is stored. The information that follows is current and correct as of the date displayed below. How can I help you? Anyone in South Australia with symptoms of COVID-19 can be tested. If you have fever, chills, or any other respiratory symptoms, cough, shortness of breath, sore throat, runny nose, or loss of taste and smell, you should get tested. Do you have these symptoms? Contact your GP about getting tested for COVID-19. Your GP clinic will ask you about your symptoms to determine if you need to be tested. If you do qualify for a test, your doctor will give you instructions on what to do.
Now, thank you for that. I'll hand back to Tanya and she'll talk about some of the statistics for this.
Okay, so thanks, Matt. So what's happened? So Zoe's been live since early April, and as Matt mentioned earlier, the conversations are a combination of both dialogue tree and NLU since mid-May, and so far has serviced around 30,000 customers. what we found is that the number of users essentially mimics the number of users on the website. So as website usage goes up, so does Zoe's use go up. As website use goes down, so does Zoe's use go down. So it does actually make it quite a predictable experience or a predictable service for SA Health. But what we have found is that the length of that conversation has increased over the period. So essentially, customers are engaging or users are engaging with Zoe for longer, as that content has been built out and as they have more complex questions that can be answered. And what we've found overall is that Zoe has become one of the team at SA Health. And I really love the fact that they do talk about Zoe and they say, you know, we have Zoe on our team and that she's servicing customers in the state. I'll mention another SA government service that we run, and that's for consumer business services. And this is for a really very different use case. Certainly doesn't have the same kind of urgency that the COVID virtual agent had. But this is designed for landlords and property managers, real estate agents, people who are wanting information about how to manage tenancies. So it's actually got very much a business focus rather than a consumer focus at this stage. And that's been, I mean, what was interesting is that when we embarked on this project, I thought to myself, gosh, I wonder how many people are going to actually use it. But we've found many more users than certainly I expected. And one of the really interesting things is that property managers and landlords are actually really interested and willing to talk to a virtual agent about their tenancy questions. Some of the questions I can recall are, my tenant dog has done poo all in the backyard, and what do I do about that?
Right.
And we've had.
I've tried kicking out our tenants; they won't pay. Things like that.
That's right. And so Claire can answer those questions and does so quite well. And what's interesting, the little chart I've shown there is actually when users are accessing Claire. And what's interesting is that they're using the service through business hours, which we expected, but then quite a lot after hours, which has been extremely heartening for CBS because that's when their contact centre is not available. But it really has supplemented and complemented their contact centre. And one of the proudest statistics that I have found from that particular implementation is that 85% of respondents would use Claire again, which is a great endorsement of the quality of the content that CBS has created there.
Yeah, CBS certainly saw such value in what Claire was delivering that when the COVID-19 crisis took place, there were a lot of questions that were being delivered by or being asked by real estate agents and landlords about COVID. You know, what are the rules and regulations in terms of doing property inspections, those types of things. So they were able to pretty quickly implement content that was specifically related to COVID.
All right, so that's a bit of an introduction to Clevertar. I actually had some discussion points here that we can refer to if you like. I'd be really happy to open this out. Now,
there are some questions.
I'll just stop sharing and have a look at what the questions are. Great. Ooh, okay. Is it? Oh, okay. Heck. Go to
start at the top.
Now, Patrice. Go, Patrice. Do you have any clients in the superannuation and finance sector? Not yet, but it is a space that I have often contemplated because of the number of users that are spread across the nation and their need for information. So
and quite predictable information.
Predictable information. urgent information. So I think it's a good. It's it would be worth exploring. Yes. Another question: how many employees in SA Health contributed to the development of the content?
There was behind the scenes. I'm not entirely sure. There's 3 or 4 that we dealt with up front, one lead, but then there was a communications team as well that, and a health lead as well that reviewed the content from a health perspective, but then also from a communications perspective as well to make sure that it was in line with marketing and the way that they communicate with consumers.
Gosh, it feels like a bit of a one-way conversation.
When you read this, yeah.
What kind of internal ITC resources do you need to maintain the VA after it goes live? Actually, not very many at all. It's a web.
That's right. It's a JavaScript snippet. It's hosted by Clevertar. It's just it lives on your website.
It's a software as a service.
That's right. So there isn't much maintenance at all really. We of course have to have a content in the technical team so that we can work with them on any web integration.
But it is generally the web team. It's not the ICT team.
That's right.
Yeah,
that's right.
It's because it's a web hosted.
Yep.
I hope that answers the question. If anyone would like to get in touch with us direct, that's quite okay. How many content items do SA Health require to map out the conversation tree? Now, what does that mean?
Content
items. Well, we started with that flowchart that we showed.
Yeah.
Patrice, I wonder.
The conversation tree can be as big or as small as you want it to be.
Well, that's right.
It really does depend on. I mean, obviously, more content the better because you can have a more in-depth conversation. But it is reliant on that content can be really small as long as the user group that are trying to seek out that information is big, and therefore there's a lot of people coming to you and it's valuable, and they're coming to you for that piece of information. So it did literally start out for SA Health with that one-page diagram and framework that I showed. It's expanded out a lot further than that because you want to continue to expand, and there's a whole bunch of other information that needs to be considered as well. But it can be quite a small conversation if it's valuable.
I hope that answers the question. Is it necessary for Clevertar to draft the scripts, or is it something that the customer can do for themselves?
No, absolutely not. Our customers are, we're more than happy for our customers to draft the scripts. As I said in my talk, our customers are always the experts in their domain. So the way that they present information is always going to be with a lot more insight than what we would provide in that space. So, if there's internal capability to draft scripts, and that's happened with a number of our customers, then absolutely. And same goes for implementing it onto our content management system. If there is internal capacity to do that, then we simply train them in how to use that system, and it can be a hand the keys over. So we work in a number of different ways.
Thank you. What's the average length of time people are engaging with Zolly?
It's about 1.5 minutes for Zolly. Typically, it's 1 or 2 conversation points as a piece of information that they require. This will change depending on the program. For example, with our installation with On the Line, which is around systems, mental health, and it's a more therapy conversation for people that are dealing with suicide or dealing with somebody they know that's dealing with suicide. That's a 4.5 minute average conversation, which is quite long.
Average can be a lot longer.
That's right. But if it's an installation where it's more about the consumer seeking an answer to a question, it's obviously going to be shorter, and typically we sit at around 1 minute for that.
Good question. I'm glad you asked. Can you ask free text questions or only pre-populated questions? Thanks, Nicole. That's a good one.
Yep. You can ask free text questions as well. So that was the component where we implemented natural language understanding with Zolly. That didn't take place in the very first iteration because natural language understanding, to be done well, does require a lot of thinking around the types of questions that your consumer is going to ask, and also and you want to make sure it's a good experience for them. You don't want the situation, which I'm sure many of you would have had with chatbots, where you write in a question and it turns around and says, sorry, I didn't understand you. There's nothing more frustrating than having that happen. So it's really important that we give users the best experience that they can have. And sometimes that actually isn't with natural language understanding.
No, that's right.
If the content is quite small, quite narrow, then it is going to be a better user experience to have it done via a pre-populated response. In the case of SA Health, and many of our other installations as well, consumer and business services with bonds and tenancies is another example, we implemented natural language understanding because the content grew and grew, and it was at a stage where we could do so, really make the consumer experience a valuable one, but also provide valuable insights. So in the SA Health instance, if you go to sahealth.gov.au, Zoe will pop up in the bottom right-hand corner, and you can ask a question after a couple of dialogues. There's an option there to do so.
So you start with the tree and then go through to the natural language after a couple of dialogues.
That's right. And where that happens will depend from project to project. It could happen at the very top of the tree, but it could happen further down as well.
Thank you. Are you able to send out contact information? Yes, we are. Thanks, Patrice.
There's another one.
Oh, I'm sorry, Judith.
Actively seeking, gathering feedback on virtual agents from the end users and not just the customer. Yeah.
Oh,
absolutely.
definitely.
Yeah.
Yes. Multiple
yeah,
different ways.
that's right. We asked that in terms of questions where they can choose from a like it scale, multiple choice options where they can say,
or just feedback.
Or just free text feedback.
Yeah.
And that is really, really valuable.
It's super valuable.
Yeah, it's helped us in a number of different ways, not just from ways that we could improve the content, but also we've learned a lot about how people are actually using the system and using the website. So it's been really valuable for our customers in a number of different ways.
Actually, and it can even change, feedback from that can even change other internal processes. Like, for instance, that outage event that happened, which then changed the way that the customer handled outage events in future.
Yeah, that's right.
Based on that feedback. So it can be quite valuable. All right. Contact, yes, we will send through contact. Can you forward the presentation? Yes, we will.
Absolutely.
Thanks, James. Thanks, that's great. What happens if NLU doesn't provide the response that they feel they need? Is there an escalation, or where does it revert to a preset response?
Great question.
Thank you.
Yes, thanks, Judith. Really this follows on from what I mentioned earlier. It's super important to make sure that the user experience is always put first. And I know personally, and I won't name any websites, but there's been times where you type stuff in and you don't get an answer, and it's actually very frustrating because you've wasted your own time, and it would have been easy to just go and try and find it on the website. The way that we handle that is by making sure that it doesn't say we don't understand you. If they type in something that is completely irrelevant, or just we don't have the right matching for that yet, we'll simply put them to the top of the tree. So we'll say, okay, does it relate to any of the following? So that they're then diverted back into the dialogue flow, and they've got an option to choose from, and they can then self-service.
And are there escalation points to web chat, say? Bit of a Dorothy Dix here.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We can hand off to web chat as well. So where organisations have existing web chat services, we can hand over to those two people. There are situations where a consumer's query is best handled by a person, where it's a complex inquiry, where it's something specific about a user's account. There's a range of areas where a virtual agent and a bot really isn't appropriate. Absolutely it can work as a triage point to say, well, I can't actually help you today. Why don't I hand you over? But also, once we've got that type of information that's been entered into the system and we haven't been able to provide an answer, we get a report from that. So we know the confidence level the system had in answering it and why it didn't present it with an option. And then we can recommend changes with our customer. We can work with them to make sure that the bot is able to answer that in future if it's appropriate.
Thanks, Matt. Any idea on likely costs? So the way that we charge for Clevertar is on a per interaction basis. So every time an interaction happens, it's 3 cents, and that's a dialogue, essentially. And then there's a hosting fee, which is per month on a month-by-month basis. So it's designed to be extremely economical and to provide value in line with the number of users who use your service. So the more users, the more it costs, but it goes up with those number of users. So that's, I hope that answers that question. But if you'd like to know more about, there is a development cost as well, but that very much depends on the size of the size and scope of the project, how much you're doing yourself, how much we're doing. So we scope that one separately, but essentially it's an interaction fee is how we charge for it. And I think we've reached the end of the questions. Look, it was a whole lot longer than a half an hour, and I hope that's okay. I'm terribly sorry. I always underestimate the amount of time that our webinars take. And
thank you for your questions as well. It's great to.
Absolutely.
It feels weird delivering it one way. It was great that obviously there's been some interest in what we've been talking about.
Thanks so much.
Yeah.
And get in touch with us, and we look forward to seeing you again next time.
Thank you.